Know your place, my mother-in-law snapped, her voice cold and sharp as ice. Of course, our son doesn't need your approval to let us stay here, she added with a disdainful smirk. You have no right to speak to him that way. Watch yourself, or you'll be the one asked to leave. Stop acting so entitled and show us to the largest room. We won't wait any longer. Janice's voice climbed higher with each word, demanding obedience. I straightened, suppressing the anger boiling beneath my calm exterior. Meeting her gaze, I spoke firmly. No, Janice, I won't do that. The room fell silent, her shocked expression a testament to her disbelief. The weight of my words lingered, thick as a thundercloud on the verge of breaking. Let me introduce myself. I'm Macy, 36 years old, standing at the crossroads of a new beginning as a single woman. Once, I was married to Tyler, a man who proved to be more of a burden than a partner. His parents, David and Janice, were no better, constantly undermining and demeaning me. Tyler and I were both accomplished in our careers, financially stable and independent, at least, that's how it seemed on the surface. Yet, despite my contributions, his parents never acknowledged my efforts. They painted me as a gold digger, someone exploiting their precious son. Tyler didn't help matters. He frequently implied I was lucky to have him, portraying himself as the provider and me as someone craving a life of luxury. What his parents didn't know was that I managed our household finances, and that Tyler had been jobless for 2 years, living off my earnings. Before our wedding, his parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement, convinced I was after his money. While I wasn't opposed to the idea of a prenup, what stung was Tyler's failure to discuss it with me. He let his parents believe I was incapable of financial independence, perpetuating lies about my income and painting himself as the sole breadwinner. For years, I endured their insults and Tyler's passive belittlement, all because I loved him. But love wasn't enough. Tyler didn't respect or appreciate me. Instead, he degraded me, accusing me of spending what he falsely claimed was his money, even though I was the one supporting us. Eventually, I reached my limit. Using an inheritance from a relative and years of personal savings, I bought a house, a beautiful place that felt like a fresh start. I put the house entirely in my name, knowing Tyler hadn't contributed a cent. He was furious, of course. Despite having no financial stake in the property, he badgered me endlessly, complaining about the decision. Things came to a head during a family dinner. Tyler's parents brought up the new house, clearly excited. Have you moved into the big, unique house yet? His mother asked. Though Tyler and I had already settled in, Janice assumed it was a joint purchase, funded by her son's modest income. She pressed for details. Did you both buy it together? She asked. I expected Tyler to clarify that I had bought the house on my own, but instead, he stunned me. I paid for it entirely, he boasted. It's all thanks to my job and my savings. His parents beamed with pride, showering him with praise. That's our son, successful and independent, Janice declared triumphantly. I tried to catch Tyler's eye, silently urging him to correct the lie, but he avoided my gaze, his smug expression only fueling my frustration. Later that evening, after we left his parents' home, I confronted him. What was that, Tyler? Why would you lie to them about the house? You didn't contribute a single penny. He waved me off dismissively. Relax, Macy, I just wanted to make them happy. I didn't want them to think I lost my job. Tyler defended himself, frustration creeping into his voice. They'd be so disappointed. What else was I supposed to do? I could feel my own frustration rising. You could have at least told them we paid 60 to 65% of the house. I snapped. Instead, you took all the credit. This is humiliating and unfair, Tyler. He sighed, his tone softening, almost submissive. Look, what's done is done. I'm not going back to fix it. I'm not going to humiliate myself. Who cares what my parents think? Let them believe whatever they want. As I stood there, processing everything, I realized something was deeply wrong. Tyler had changed after our marriage. He no longer seemed to care about me or my feelings. And now, the truth was undeniable, he had been relying on me for the last 2 years, and despite his minimal effort to find work, he still had the gall to argue about being on the house title. But just as I began to confront the painful reality of being used, something else happened. One evening, as I was preparing a snack, the doorbell rang. Tyler rushed to answer it, his nervousness catching my attention. To my shock, standing in the doorway were his parents, with all their belongings in tow. They were grinning with excitement, announcing that they were moving in. They claimed Tyler had invited them to stay in the house he had supposedly bought. I stood frozen, blindsided, as Tyler played along, nodding eagerly and confirming that it was indeed his idea. He said they needed to stay in the large house because he had bought it. In that moment, I understood that Tyler's deception had spiraled even further. As I stood there, struggling to process what was happening, I realized I had never agreed to let his parents live in the house. But Tyler, with his manipulations, had already set the stage. I couldn't confront him in front of his parents, but I knew I had to handle this with care. His parents, thrilled with their plans, gushed about living in such a magnificent and spacious home. They eagerly discussed how they would claim the biggest bedroom. I could feel the tension rising inside me, frustration simmering beneath the surface. I knew it was time to act. Turning to Tyler, I said sharply, "We need to talk, now." Tyler avoided my gaze, his unease only fueling my anger. "Why didn't you tell me they were coming?" I demanded. "You can't just make decisions like this without consulting me." Tyler, clearly trying to deflect, suggested, "Maybe we should just discuss it in front of my parents." His voice was laced with false confidence. I crossed my arms, standing my ground. "Fine, Tyler, if you want to discuss it in front of your parents, so be it." Without waiting for his response, I turned to Janice. "Go ahead, then, tell me what you want." Janice's eyes narrowed, her voice cutting. "Of course, our son doesn't need your permission to stay here," she said sharply. "Know your place, Macy. You can't speak to him like that. Be careful, or you'll find yourself the one asked to leave. Stop acting spoiled and show us to the largest room. We've waited long enough." I stood tall, unwavering, and met her gaze directly. "No, Janice, I don't think I'll be doing that." The shock on their faces was priceless. Tyler's deception had created this mess, but still, they were entitled enough to act as though they were in control. Janice's glare could have burned through me. "What do you mean, Macy? If you don't show us to the room your son promised, we'll have to take matters into our own hands. We ended our lease for this. Tyler promised to take care of us." "In that case, Janice, you've made a huge mistake," I said coolly. "I don't think you'll be staying here, and certainly not in the largest room." Janice's eyes narrowed. "How dare you? We don't need your approval to stay here. Our son will show us where to go if you won't. Remember, this house isn't yours alone to decide who stays." I held her gaze firmly. "You've misunderstood, Janice. I'm not sure if Tyler told you, but this house belongs to me, not him. So, no, you won't be getting the largest room. You'll have to figure something else out." David's voice rose in disbelief. "What? That's impossible. Our son assured us he bought this house. You're lying." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really? Well, why don't you check with Tyler? I'm sure he'll clear things up for you." Janice shot me a withering look before turning to Tyler with indignation. "Tyler, tell your wife she's lying. Tell her you bought the house. You told us you were the one who did." Tyler's silence was deafening. He avoided their gaze, his eyes fixed on the floor. It was then that they began to doubt the story. Slowly, the realization seemed to hit them. They had spent all this time thinking I was the one using Tyler, while in reality, Tyler had been using both of them. "Why aren't you saying anything, Tyler? You promised us this house was yours. Speak up, tell her she can't evict us," Janice demanded. I couldn't hold back anymore. "What will he say, guys? He's been lying to you the whole time. I can even provide the property papers proving I'm the sole owner of this house," I stated firmly, refusing to back down. "That's impossible. You have a simple job and limited finances. Our son has a substantial income. There's no way this house is yours," Janice scoffed, her disbelief etched across her face. I turned to her with a sharp retort. "A substantial income, you say? That's amusing, considering he's been unemployed for 2 years. Since then, he's been living off my earnings, and for the record, I have an excellent job. Just because I don't flaunt my success doesn't mean I'm financially weak." The shock on Janice and David's faces was unmistakable. Tyler, true to form, kept his gaze fixed on the floor, his silence more revealing than any words. Despite their persistent questions, he refused to confirm or deny anything. I let the tension hang for a moment before delivering my decision. "David and Janice, I've hosted you in my home long enough. It's time for you to gather your belongings and leave." "Macy, you can't just throw my parents out like that," Tyler protested, his voice rising in desperation. "They ended their lease to be here with us. They have nowhere else to go. You can't put them on the streets. Tyler, I said, my tone steely, I can and I will. You didn't consult me before making this decision, and you certainly didn't consider me when you promised them a place in my house. Tyler stood his ground, defiance coloring his tone. While this may be your house, I'm still your husband. If I decide my parents stay, then they'll stay. You can't evict them. David and Janice chimed in, echoing Tyler's sentiment. This house belongs to our son as much as it does to you. Anything that's yours is also his. You have no right to force us out. I turned to Janice, my tone icy. I absolutely can remove you, and Tyler, too, if it comes to that. Since you're so insistent, let me clarify. I'll be drafting an eviction notice for Tyler as well, but don't worry, it won't be long before he's no longer my husband. Tyler's face turned pale. What are you saying, Macy? Are you seriously planning to divorce me? Yes, Tyler, I responded with finality. I'll contact my lawyer tomorrow and have the papers drafted. You can expect them within 10 days. Panic flashed across Tyler's face, and his tone shifted from defiance to desperation. You can't do this. I'll fight for half the house, and alimony, too. I almost laughed. Good luck with that, I replied coolly. You and your parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement, remember? It clearly states that neither of us can claim alimony, and all personal assets remain with their original owner in the event of a divorce. This house is mine, Tyler, and you won't see a cent of it. Realization hit him like a freight train. His parents, too, seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation. David tried to salvage the moment. Macy, let's not rush into this. We're all adults here. Surely we can have a calm discussion. I shook my head, unmoved. I'm not interested in a discussion. I'm not a doormat, and I won't let anyone, especially you three, treat me like one. It's time for all of you to leave. But where will we go? Janice pleaded, her voice cracking. That's your problem, I replied coldly. You ended your lease based on your assumptions. I won't take responsibility for your poor planning. When my in-laws refused to leave after an hour, I called the police. They were escorted out, and Tyler exploded with rage. How could you humiliate my parents like that? He yelled, his face red with anger. You humiliated yourself, Tyler, I shot back, and don't forget, you have 1 month to vacate my house. From that night onward, I refused to let Tyler back into my bedroom. He stayed in the guest room until he was served with an eviction notice. His parents, meanwhile, drained their savings on a hotel before finding another place to rent. Interestingly, they didn't invite Tyler to stay with them, leaving him scrambling for shelter. It seemed his parents wanted him to pay for his lies, and their relationship with him soured. Blame flew back and forth, fracturing their bond. Tyler couch-surfed with friends until he eventually found a job. As for me, I filed for divorce and started rebuilding my life. There was no going back, not to a man who had disrespected and used me so brazenly. Tyler begged me to reconsider, but I stood firm. 3 months later, our divorce was finalized. With no children to complicate matters, I moved on quickly, focusing on myself and even venturing back into the dating world. Tyler, on the other hand, still hopes for a reconciliation, but that will only ever happen in his dreams.